This is a Battle Order Patreon Q&A. Long awaited, I guess, because I said I was going to do one when I had 100k and never did. So let's get into it. First, from Bay Reese a while back, what are some other YouTube channels, projects, or people that your viewer base would be interested in? Imperial is criminally underrated in my opinion, really stunning 3D visuals and history content. Kamome, I don't really know how to say it, is also really visually excellent and just hit 100k subscribers. And there's Showtime 112, who chronicles air battles using DCS, often in conflicts we don't really get a lot of content on, like India versus Pakistan and conflicts in the Middle East. I've also noticed he has a lot of Patreon exclusive videos as well. From Imminent, and basically asked in a different way by Robodoc, are you planning on creating YouTube content long-term, 5+ years? If so, in what way do you imagine your channel will change as time progresses? I think for right now I'm just cruising. I want to do this for as long as possible because I'm interested in the topic area and I can learn new skills at my own pace, but probably more important, it's a really chill and flexible job. There are stressful and grindy moments sometimes, usually a few days or a 1 to 2 week long period, especially when it's a battle map video or any sponsored video, but generally I can wake up whenever I want. I'm not beholden to anyone except for my patrons and sponsors when I'm under contract. What I earn is directly tied to my work, and maybe most importantly, so long as I don't have a sponsor deadline, I can hang out with my wife whenever and I don't have to take vacation days if there's an emergency. Back in December, my landlord was selling the apartment we were renting and the flatmates already have, full-time jobs. So it's hard for them to get out to look at apartments. So yeah, my output dropped a little during that time, but I also didn't get fired because I spent 2 weeks doing nothing but looking for a place to live. So for now, just adding to the production quality and the rarity of the info over time is the move, I think. Maybe introduce a new format here or there and do some more collabs. But if you look at my first couple videos from 2019, it's basically like if you took military history visualized and threw it in a dumpster that was on fire. So I think incremental improvement has gone a long way. From Pagin, have you served in any way? And if not, have you ever thought about it? No, I'm basically just a guy. I was planning on enlisting after graduating college and after spending a year in Australia back in 2018, but I got married and stayed here for 5 years instead. So we'll see once I get back to the US for good. From Flair, cats or dogs? And what countries do you think are hard or impossible to do videos on? Definitely dogs, unless if it's an Nice. Shut up. Definitely dog.
Definitely dogs, unless it's particularly chunky cat.
Especially exceptional. Anyway. But anyway. And there are a ton of countries where there's basically no information on the internet until some random guy on Facebook posts an excerpt of something in some obscure group or whatever. I think Africa, except maybe South Africa and the French sphere, is sort of a blind spot. And most of the Middle East, Israel is maybe an exception because so many people there speak English, but I've never seen a written primary source for modern stuff, or modern military stuff, probably because it's restricted legally, I'd assume. Asia, outside of the big countries people are looking at, like outside of Japan, South Korea, China, India, etc., is a little bit better, but not by much. But all that changes when like one guy who was in one of those obscure military slides into my DMs, and that has happened on occasion. From Boffers, tell us more about your family history from the Japanese American side. Luckily, my mom was really into the genealogy stuff before she passed away. So my Japanese family came to the US around 1904 from the Kansai region and Kyushu. I know my grandmother's side had a dairy farm and it got arsoned multiple times by xenophobes. They had to take a case to the state Supreme Court because of racist laws that didn't allow aliens to own land. To get around it, the farm was held in trust by one of the children who was born in the US, but the county prosecutor accused fraud so they could confiscate the farm. They ultimately sort of won. But the farm was foreclosed on when they were interned during World War II, and they didn't return to that town. My Japanese grandfather joined the army during the war, although I don't think he fought, and my great-uncle fought in the 442nd Regimental Combat Team in Europe and earned a Purple Heart. From Azulambra, you once mentioned that you didn't have a clear schedule and that the subjects of your videos were chosen after something sparked your interest. But how does this work exactly? Do you have sudden urges to learn about a specific topic, or do you encounter said topic during research for something else and see potential for a future video? So most of the time, I basically go into a topic that I'm really interested in that moment after I finish the preceding video. Or sometimes I'll be working on a video and I'll get some sort of inspiration and shift gears. There are some exceptions, like I think my Battle of Dompierre video, which was about a French combat command that destroyed a German Panther Brigade in 1944. That was basically, I was researching an Operation Serval video, which was a French intervention in Mali, and I was researching their battalion tactical group type things, their Groupement Tactique Interarmes, and that got me to their origins during World War II from US practice of combat commands and task forces and stuff. So that was a case where I started the Operation Serval video before the Battle of Dompierre video, but then I shifted gears and did the Battle of Dompierre video first. But then the Operation Serval video was still on the back burner for a couple months, because when I let it kind of simmer or let it rest, the video idea rest, let a script rest, can add research over time. Luckily, one of my patrons was actually an Operation Serval veteran, and he's still in the French army, so he was able to help me out with the order of battle. Because I checked French news sources to get the order of battle and French army sources, but still, the French media is still going to get some stuff wrong, and he was able to help me get it really super detailed, to the company team level, which is pretty cool. But back to the original question, I find that when I make a schedule, I inevitably lose interest in the videos that are on the back burner. It's why it's kind of one of the dangers, because even with Operation Serval video and the Ukrainian raid of the 95th Brigade, I think having it on the back burner for a little bit made the videos better, because I added research over time, and I learned new video editing techniques and animation stuff in that period, so the video is just going to be better by the end of it. But then it's kind of it's hard to get back into it, because it's kind of you're so far removed, you have to go through all the original research again. It's not fresh, so it's a little bit of a trade-off. But that's why I don't schedule it, because if it was on a regular basis, if I was really into this topic 1 week, and then I put on the back burner, if it's just a normal topic, any given week, I'm not going to be into it a month from now. And that kind of makes the whole process a big grind when I'm not into the video topic. From Micah, I know your focus is on the 20th and 21st century militaries, but would you consider doing a video on the 19th century army organizations? So I'd say it's not really my area of expertise, but I'm not really an expert in any of this military stuff either. Things I am an expert on, I sort of know my way around Adobe Illustrator. I'm an expert on which monster flavors I like, and I did squat 6 plates once, although I stopped lifting for years, just recently picked it back up, and now it's not impressive if you're squatting below 700, it seems, so. But anyway, if for some reason I get really interested in a 19th century thing, I might. But might make that a second channel video if that happens, just because it's hard for me to get people to watch even World War I or World War II stuff. So it might be not be right for my audience. It's very modern-centric, I think. So from Aaron Moore a long time ago, When studying the military, what is your favorite aspect to study? As in, what interests you the most? The history, weapon systems like planes, ships, etc., and why? So I think right now I'm obviously really into the organization piece of it, really at the company, battalion, and brigade levels when it comes to battle videos. Although when I started, I was really much more into the squad and platoon levels, which are more weapons-centric. Units are sort of like collectibles, right? Different countries have done different things at different times with different types of units in different circumstances, but there are similarities across the board. When you look at my Instagram, you can it's really easy to see that all the squads, you know, there's bits and pieces that are pretty much the same, but then they got their different flavor to them, you know. Different weapons, different ways of organizing things, but they're all kind of fundamentally the same, right? They're groups of like, you know, 6 to 15 dudes. Probably going to be an automatic weapon, probably going to be a way to project explosives, probably generally have the same role of fire and maneuver. And that sort of worked out for me because there's a lot of room for people to make it easier to understand graphically since it's hugely abstract once you get above the company level. The squad, it's a little easier to grasp because you can get a group of 10 people and like the specific weapon systems they have. You know, you can understand a rifle. You can understand, you know, bounding, Overwatch, and, you know, the very small unit tactics. But once you get to like, you know, battalion, that's like, it's gonna be like 300 to 600 dudes. You know, the weapon systems are a lot heavier, requires a lot more sustainment. You know, the tactics are more complex, a larger scale. It's hard to wrap your head around. But as for other topics, I'm not too into personalities like, you know, like generalship and politicians and whatnot. I definitely like watching narrative-based history stuff like Kings and Generals and Epic History TV. Sort of into weapon systems, but only insofar as what their capabilities allow a unit to do in a context. Not super into the minutiae of weapon systems in isolation, so channels that just talk about gear aren't usually in my rotation. From Ryan Ferris a while back, which video you've made this year has been your favorite? So this question was asked at the end of 2021, around when I hit 100k subs, because, you know, I'm a lazy piece of shit. So at that time, without a doubt, the Little Rock video, probably still one of my favorites, to be honest. Basically my favorite moment in American military history. The video itself isn't that well produced in comparison to now, just because, you know, I don't even think I was using that much After Effects back then. I definitely didn't have a map from the period. But I think it's pretty important. A lot of what can define American history after the Civil War is failures of Reconstruction. Plus, every time it hits the algorithm, it triggers a bunch of racist losers, so that's obviously a good thing. A second would either be the video on Russia's 200th Arctic Brigade. It was a narrative-driven video. I liked the research behind it. It was open source research, but I spent a lot of time on that. And, you know, a more somber tone. Or the Operation Serval video. That's got probably the most views. It's almost 2 million, I think. If that's not the top view one, then it's going to be the one on Russian tank losses from like the first week of the war in Ukraine. From Jack Mayer, basically asked by Derpies as well, do you have any plans to do another collab with other YouTubers like what you did with the Temple Institute? So I have it in the back of my mind. There are some people I'd like to, probably smaller YouTubers than myself, but need to block out some mental bandwidth, especially if it's like a deep collab where we're kind of like crafting this topic and the structure together, and not just giving my take and looking over the script like I did with the Temple Institute video, their sci-fi tank video. Because as far as my actual involvement with that, I looked over their entire script and gave them notes, and I did like my little segmented part. I didn't even know Spookston was in that video until it came out. So like the Templin was completely managing that. From Wellesley, would you ever go back and remake a video / revisit a topic you've already covered? Maybe. The obvious candidate is when it's a thing that's ongoing and there's developments in the story. Like, I should probably revisit the Polish tank video, because basically I made that video and then, you know, all kinds of crap happened. All their T-72s went to Ukraine. The K2 was selected. Spare Abrams going over there, you know. And then the U.S. Army 2030 divisions, and that's just going to be ongoing process. New white papers will come out. New white paper came out in February 2023 with slightly updated versions of the organizations and more fleshed out sustainment. I think a sustainment Army 2030 video would be cool. But also the penetration division has changed slightly. Motorcycle outside. But barring that, not too sure. Gotta kind of measure whether, you know, treading old ground, is it worth it to have that big time commitment? Especially if it wasn't like, you know, super popular video. In some cases, newer videos basically cover the same ground but expand on it. Like, I've covered the U.S. Army and U.S. Marine infantry squads a few times over the years. From Desert Shore of the YouTube members, why do the French have multiple distinct vehicles called AMX-10? I think it basically means they're part of the 10-ton weight class. AMX means that it's designed by the Issy-les-Moulineaux construction workshops. No shot I pronounced that correctly. So you got the AMX-10 RC for the wheeled cannon. The RC is roue canon. You know, I don't speak French. And AMX-10P for personnel. Both around the same weight and designed by the same place, but with their little suffix to denote the type. And from Ego Stack, in the case of World War III in the coming years, which armed forces out of the major world powers, the US, China, Russia, etc., do you think would win from an unbiased military standpoint? So this question was asked in December 2021, and I think since then we can unequivocally strike one of the countries from the list. From Big Papa Chump, what does the 11th Airborne need to do in the Army's 2030 plan, and how will they do it? So not every division has to have 3 brigade combat teams or have a standardized set of BCT types like in the white papers. 11th Airborne, I believe, will be a standard light division, even though their brigade combat teams are specialized in air assault and airborne. But some divisions can have 2 brigades and of different types, so it doesn't have to be, it's not so rigid in the reform that, you know, every division has to fit a strict set of templates. So the 11th Airborne is is going to be specialized in Arctic warfare and will get a special equipment different from other divisions. So it's sort of an edge case, really, but it probably won't be a full-on joint forcible entry division in the same way that the 82nd Airborne is in terms of the reform, even if its brigades are airborne and air assault. So in the Army 2030 reform, the JFE divisions, the Airborne Air Assault, 101st, 82nd Airborne, and the penetration divisions, the 1st Armored Division, the 1st Armored, 1st Cavalry, and 34th Infantry National Guard Division. They're basically the focus, they're the priority, and then all the other divisions kind of, you know, they'll get their stuff down the pipe. But the big things would be standing up a Divardi and Division Sustainment Brigade to centralize some of the assets currently in BCTs. It's unclear whether the light divisions will get a division cavalry, or whether the 11th Airborne specifically needs one. So we'll have to see how that plays out. And there could be some information that people in the Army know on the 11th Airborne that I don't, obviously, because kind of just saying this off the cuff and haven't read too far into the TAA process. And that does it for this Q&A, guys. See you in the next one.